for being here in Times Square today to celebrate love. Oh, hello, Brandon Kazan Maddox, our amazing ASL interpreter. You ready? Take your time. Yes, okay. Thank you for being here in celebration of love on this beautiful winter day. I'm Jean Cooney. I'm with the Times Square Alliance, and it's an honor to be here celebrating the 17th annual Love and Design competition in Times Square, and specifically celebrating this year's winning design. Presented by Times Square Arts with the curatorial partner The World Around and collaborator Billion Oyster Project, we are thrilled to unveil Love Ever After by Pernilla Ohrstedt Studio. As New Yorkers and as global citizens, we're living through a cultural and political moment that will surely be noted as one of the most divisive in recent history, where care for one another seems to be in decline and fear leading the charge. And while that might seem to be an odd time to let your guard down, perhaps it's the perfect time to make space for love, which, much like fear, is contagious. And standing for love in one of the most iconic public spaces in the world inevitably creates room for millions more to do the same. Responding to a brief by The World Around and encouraging reuse, regrowth, and a love for both people and planet, New York City-based Swedish designer Pernilla Ohrstedt has offered up Love Ever After. Constructed from over 40 oyster cages to create a three-dimensional grid revealing the geometries of a heart. On view through March 4th, Love Ever After will also transform into the backdrop for our annual Love in Times Square events on Valentine's Day, which include Real Deal, wedding ceremonies, surprise proposals, and vow renewals on Duffy Square. And before we hear from our winner and our collaborators, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the small village of people who made this public artwork possible. Thank you to our panel of jurors, some of whom are here today, who represent an incredible amount of expertise across the fields of architecture, design, and public art. Vishan Chakrabarti, Carson Chan, Wendy Foyer, Kendall Henry, Angelique Vizcarrondo-Laboy, Jing Liu, and Elizabeth Masella. It was a difficult decision between the excellent finalists for this year's competition, which included Atelier Masomi, Jerome Hayford, Space Caviar, and Studio Galeon. For Love Ever After, we want to thank our collaborators at Lucifer Lighting, KT Color, and Heidi for their fabrication services. Support for Love Ever After is provided in part by the New York State Council on the Arts, the New York State Legislature, and public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Additional support is provided by the Consulate General of Sweden in New York. I want to thank our Assistant Director, Christina Daniels, our Public Art Manager, Liam Archer, the broader team at the Times Square Alliance, especially our colleagues in operations, sanitation, and public safety who allow our plazas to be clean, safe, and welcoming exhibition spaces for public art. I'm honored to choose love alongside this all-star team, whom you'll hear from soon, but first, a few words from our supporter, Erik Ullenhag, Consul General of Sweden.
Thank you so much. Let me start by thanking Times Square Art and Billion Oyster Project before saying some words. I don't know about you, but I start every morning with scanning the news. And I'm an optimist by nature. But some mornings when I start scanning the news, that optimism tends to go down. Climate change. A couple of weeks ago, the fires in Los Angeles. Human suffering in Ukraine. Human suffering in the Middle East. And you know, I started off optimistic, but then I slightly more pessimistic. What always gives me energy is the people that are trying to make the change. They're trying to do something. Pernilla Ohrstedt's work here, Love Ever After, is much in line with what Sweden is trying to do when it comes to finding solutions to climate change, and watching something that actually could also teach us something together with the Oyster Project in how to actually save the climate and save the environment. So tomorrow morning when I will wake up, I try to stop, scanning the news, but I'm doing that. I'm gonna scan and use, I'm gonna think about love ever after, and I'm gonna feel a little bit more optimistic because you see some kinds of solutions here. And I also learned just recently that we get married here the 14th of February. So if anybody is thinking about, this is a great place to get married, think about Sweden, think about transition, think about good art, and thank you so much for this cooperation.
I'd like to introduce Beatrice Galilee, founder of the Walkaround.
When we think about architecture, we perhaps think about everything that's surrounding us here in Times Square. Urban centers, skyscrapers, museums, and culture. While we here benefit from the cultural, economic, and civic impact of the best design and architecture, the construction industry at large is responsible for a staggering 40% of global carbon emissions today. But architecture doesn't just drain the world of resources, it can help fix it. Since 2020, my organization, The Walkaround, has been curating stories from progressive and inspiring designers and architects all over the world, the people who are changing the game. These designers, thinkers, and change makers are lights in the darkness, showing us a positive and hopeful future. We are incredibly grateful at the Walkaround to Times Square Arts for inviting us to collaborate on this annual commission. And we are able to have an opportunity to recognize the vital role that architecture and design can play in shaping a better world. We wrote a brief for the competition that challenged architects. We asked, how can you create a temporary structure that would not only do no harm to the environment, but that could actively, radically repair? How can architecture be a symbol and a signal of optimism and creativity, leading the way to fight the climate crisis and prove that this industry also provides hope and solutions for the future? We received applications and proposals from some fantastic global architects, but we're so thrilled that the winning project came from Pernilla Ohrstedt, whose design here today, through its collaborative and visionary nature, working with the Billion Oyster Project, shows how we can pre-cycle, how we can use materials inventively and creatively, and how great design can be part of shaping a better world. Thank you, Pernilla, and I'm going to hand over to you to explain more about this beautiful project. Thank you so much.
How's everyone doing today? Woo! I'm incredibly grateful to everyone over here for making this happen, and especially the team at Billion Oyster Project who's over here, did all the hard work on our end. So Billion Oyster Project, we're working to restore New York Harbor. You may not know this, but the place that we're standing right now, the middle of New York City, used to be one of the most abundant ecosystems on the face of the earth. So if we were standing here 400 years ago, we'd be surrounded by wild animals. The backbone of that ecosystem was oyster reefs, which for millennia provided food and habitat for all the animals in the harbor. They stabilize the bottom, they protect the shores, they are the ecosystem in New York Harbor. There used to be 200,000 acres of oyster reef before we ate them all and then turned the harbor into a dumping ground. And the harbor was in that toxic, polluted state for a long time. Most of you probably think of New York Harbor that way, despite the fact that all the streets here end at the water's edge. You probably don't think about New York Harbor as an important natural resource that you have a right to access. We're trying to change that. We want to restore New York Harbor by building and restoring reefs around the harbor and make New York Harbor a public amenity that all New Yorkers are proud of. Everyone in New York City has a right to access a clean, accessible, and abundant harbor. One of the ways we do that is with oyster cages, gabions, oyster baskets, oyster research stations. That's what this is built out of. It's built out of the mesh that will soon be turned into small oyster cages, placed at sites all around the water's edge and used by public school students as remote laboratories to study New York Harbor, get to hold fish, shrimp, and crabs in their hands for the first time, find seahorses and all the other animals we see in the harbor, and be a small part of the solution for making New York Harbor what it could be. We can't wait for that. We know we're going to get there. As Erik said, caring about the environment does not need to be scary, off-putting thing. There's a ton of bad news out there, but we can restore the environment with hope and with love and by coming together to restore oyster reefs. So thank you so much for having us here today. Thanks for this collaboration, and thank you for your beautiful art.
All right, and last but not least, we'll hear from our winning designer and architect, Pernilla Ohrstedt.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Pernilla Ohrstedt. I run an architecture and design firm called Pernilla Ohrstedt Studio here in New York. I am thrilled to be here. I was thrilled to win this project that is a result of a fantastic brief set by the world around and Times Square. It really sort of exemplifies all of the things that I think are important in design and architecture. It's not only about creating something beautiful, although that's perhaps the first thing you think about, or the thing that you can't resist. But it's also about thinking about, for example, how to design a life cycle of a project. You know, where does it start? Where does it end? How does it affect people along the way? What stories does it tell? And importantly, like, how does it impact our environment in the end? So I wanted this project to celebrate here on Times Square, which is, you know, a place for sending messages all around us. We see them. I wanted to use this opportunity to celebrate and broadcast the work of the Billion Oyster Project. And so I sort of pre-cycled the material that they need for to monitor their reefs, to support their reefs. So I used this oyster gabion mesh, and I've simply painted on a three-dimensional heart, sort of turning this stack of gabions, oyster reef gabions, into a three-dimensional heart, a kind of low-tech version of these very high-tech screens that we see all around us. This is sort of ephemeral. It's the way to view this is to think of it as maybe something that is more you found in nature. It's a rainbow heart, of course, and in just like a rainbow, it sort of appears and disappears and blends with the with Times Square around you. And after this installation is finished here in a month's time, we will donate the material that have already been pre-cut to the sizes that are needed by the Billion Oyster Project, and it will become the Oyster Research Station. And for me, the project isn't finished until this sculpture ends up in the water supporting these reefs all along the New York shoreline. And this is actually the part that I find most romantic about this project, connecting Times Square, the heart of the city, to its shorelines, connecting this very sort of man-made place, full of energy, full of culture, to New York's shore, New York's harbor, and its history as this abundant natural place, natural environment. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you everyone. I think that makes it official. We're excited to unveil, pretend there's something covering this, tada, Love Ever After by Pernilla Ohrstedt.